Hello everyone, I'm your host Ishika Jain, and today with Advocate Govind Bali sir, we are going to discuss how to start a company in India. So sir, my first question to you is, someone has a brilliant idea. What's the first practical step they should take before even thinking about registration?
See, first you have to put your idea on paper as to what you want to do. Now, if your idea is with respect to opening a food company, so you need to first make a list of what licenses would you need, how much funds would you need, who's going to be a partner with you, where do you want the company to be registered, how are you going to share the percentage of profits with each other, who's going to have what percentage of shares in the company, and आपको कितने टाइम के अंदर कंपनी को बनाना है और आगे लेके जाना.
So how important is market research at this initial stage? Can't I just dive in?
See, market research is very important. For example, you want to sell clothes. You need to understand what kind of market would be suiting you, what kind of people are actually going to be your audience, how are you going to bring up the idea of sales, how are you going to break even, how are you going to make profits out of the business, and then in the end, what would be the finances and the risk involved. Because without you do the market research, how are you going to select a target audience? How are you going to decide what business are you going to do? What kind of people are you going to tender and cater to?
So India offers various business structures like sole proprietorship, LLP or private limited company, etc. How does an aspiring entrepreneur choose the right one, and what are the key differences to consider?
See, basically, you have only listed three of them. There's another thing called a proprietorship. Then there's also another thing called as a limited company. Then there's one thing called as a partnership business. So basically, if you want to get listed in the share market 10 years down the line, then opening a private limited company is an important task, because everything you do goes in public domain if you're running a private limited company. The taxes are comparatively higher in a private limited company. Compliances are comparatively more in a private limited company. And generally, a private limited company should have two or more directors. It is not that only one person can run a company. You cannot be the sole director in a private limited company. There has to be one or more people in a private limited company, and the directors become the heart and soul of the company, and the company itself is a legal entity. So basically जो company है उसका अपना एक brain है. So वो brain जो है वो directors and managers and management के through चल रहा है. So अगर आपको कल को ये लगता है कि आप बहुत ज्यादा स्केल कर जाओगे, आपको ये लगता है कि आप इतना ज्यादा स्केल कर जाओगे कि you will get listed in the stock market someday, or you will be a limited company someday, limited by shares, and a public company later on, then obviously you should go for a private limited company registration. Because private limited registration के अंदर आपके सारे जो records हैं वो पब्लिक डोमेन में अवेलेबल हो जाते हैं. आपकी बैलेंस शीट्स, आपके प्रॉफिट्स, आपके लॉसेस, एवरीथिंग. बट इफ यू थिंक यू कैन नॉट फाइंड अ पार्टनर एंड यू वांट टू रन द कंपनी ऑन योर ओन, देयर इज अनदर ऑप्शन कॉल्ड एज वन पर्सन कंपनी. अब वन पर्सन कंपनी क्या होता है कि उसमें एक ही बंदा डायरेक्टर होता है, एंड ही इज द सोल रिस्पॉन्सिबल इंडिविजुअल फॉर द होल प्रोसेस. व्हेन आई से दैट ही इज द सोल responsible individual for the whole processes, he's the signing authority, he's the person on whose name the company is running, and he's the only director in that company. So he becomes a one person company, and it is called a one person company by the name itself, because only one person is running all the affairs of the company. So one person company generally वो लोग चूज करते हैं जिनको पता है कि वो सिंगल हैंडेडली पूरा काम चला सकते हैं, and they can scale it individually, and they do not need any other partners in the particular framework for the time being. Now इसके बाद आती है LLP. LLP एक इंडियन नेम है for the functions of something known as LLC. That is a limited liability company. In India we call it limited liability partnership. So पहले जो हमने जो एक्ट्स की बात करी, दैट इज जो कंपनीज की बात करी, प्राइवेट लिमिटेड कंपनी, वन पर्सन कंपनी, दीज आर कवर्ड बाय द कंपनीज एक्ट. वेयर एज जो LLP है, इट इज कवर्ड बाय द लिमिटेड लाइबिलिटी पार्टनरशिप्स एक्ट. नाउ दिस बेसिकली सेज कि दोनों जो पार्टनर्स है वो एक पार्टनरशिप में काम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन इन दोनों की जो लाइबिलिटीज हैं वो लिमिटेड. लिमिटेड लाइबिलिटी का मतलब ये होता है कि अगर तुमने कोई फ्रॉड किया फॉर एग्जांपल और तुम पार्टनरशिप में हो मेरे साथ, so that fraud which you have individually committed has got nothing to do with the LLP. You have got your liability to fight for. I am not responsible for it. If there is something that I do personal in my personal capacity in the company without the actual directions of the LLP, the partnership, then my faults are my responsibility. I am limited to my liabilities. You are limited to your liabilities. And दोनों एक दूसरे की liabilities पे limited नहीं. So it is a more secure way of doing business. In an LLP, a doctor and a lawyer can work together in a partnership because they are from two different professions, but still they can get into a partnership to run a company or a partnership, limited liability partnership कह सकते हैं उसको. और LLP के अंदर कंपनी से कम है compliances, but still you are a legal entity. You get all the registrations, you are available, you get a DIN number, you get all the PAN card numbers, and तुम्हारा taxation उस LLP के नाम पे होता रहता है. So LLP basically works for people who are into professional businesses or service providing, who do not wish to get to the stock market even after growing a larger amount. They are basically into businesses which are easy to do and are limited to their professional capacities, and they can combine two professions and turn into one business. So you can use LLPs for that, and LLPs can use for conventional businesses also if you want to keep the liabilities limited.
So once the business structure is decided, what are the core legal and procedural steps involved in officially registering a company in India?
See, basically, if you want to register a company, one person company or LLP, सबसे पहले आप लोग एक नाम अप्लाई करोगे, and then ये decide होगा whether that name is available or not, and then you will be allocated a name out of the options that you give. Now there cannot be two Haldirams in this country, right? So you will decide whether that name is available or not. After that name is done, you will look for a lawyer or a law firm or a CA who is actually going to help you in the registration process. So पहले आपके डिजिटल सिग्नेचर्स बनेंगे, फिर नेम एलोकेशन होगा, नेम एलोकेशन के बाद आपके सब्सक्राइबर फॉर्म्स भरे जाएंगे, फिर कंपनी के मेमोरेंडम ऑफ एसोसिएशन बनाया जाएगा, मेमोरेंडम ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग बनाया जाएगा, पार्टनर्स की डीड्स बनाई जाएंगी, स्टार्टअप इंडिया के अंदर आपकी रजिस्ट्रेशन कराई जाएगी, then your GST and tax benefits will be decided, and then how are the functions going to happen? You will have to have a registered address. आफ्टर द रजिस्टर्ड एड्रेस आप एक सीए को अपॉइंट करोगे जो आप आपकी कंपनी को ऑडिट करेगा दिन पर दिन. एवरी मंथ देयर विल बी एन ऑडिट फॉर योर इंटरनल मैकेनिज्म. देन ईयर एंड के अंदर तो एक फाइलिंग जाती ही जाती है. देन इफ यू आर अ जीएसटी रजिस्टर्ड कंपनी, जीरो फाइलिंग हैज टू बी डन. अगर कोई बिल नहीं भी काट रहा हुआ तो जीएसटी का जीरो फाइलिंग आपको करना ही करना है. तो उसके लिए यू विल हैव टू लुक फॉर अ पर्सन. नाउ आफ्टर द कंपनी इज रजिस्टर्ड, यू वुड नीड टू लुक फॉर अ ट्रेडमार्क. नाउ आपकी कंपनी का जो नाम है या लोगो है वो आपके अलावा कोई और यूज ना करे, इसलिए आप ट्रेडमार्क लोगे. अब ट्रेडमार्क का काम ये है, इट इज प्रोटेक्टिंग योर इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी एट द लॉन्गर रन. मतलब कल को गोविंद बाली अगर एक ट्रेडमार्क है तो गोविंद बाली कोई और यूज करके उससे प्रॉफिट्स ना निकाल सके और मेरी ब्रांड वैल्यू को यूज करके कोई प्रॉफिट्स ना निकाल सके, इसलिए ट्रेडमार्क अप्लाई किया जाता है.
So how long does this entire registration process typically take, assuming everything goes smoothly?
Approximately 15 to 30 days for a private limited company, and in LLP sometimes around 40 days. मतलब 25 to 40 days लग जाते हैं. Reason being, sometimes the official website goes down because of the टाइम पीरियड दैट यू आर देयर. अगर टैक्स फाइलिंग के टाइम पे आप रजिस्टर करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो तो बहुत डिफिकल्ट हो जाता है बिकॉज सर्वर्स बहुत बिजी रहते हैं. एंड फिर ये भी डिपेंड करता है कि कस्टमर जो है, जो क्लाइंट है, वो आपको कितनी जल्दी डॉक्यूमेंट्स प्रोवाइड कर रहा है.
So now let's talk about essential documents. What specific documents are absolutely crucial for company registration, both for the individuals involved and for the proposed company itself?
See, सबसे पहले तो you need to have a rent agreement. You need to have Aadhaar card of both the parties. You need to have digital signatures of both the applicants in case of a company. Then you need to have a registered address. And जो भी address आपका है, उसके ओनर से आपको एनओसी चाहिए. एनओसी के बाद आपको एक रेंट एग्रीमेंट चाहिए, एंड आफ्टर दैट यू वुड बी रजिस्टरिंग फॉर द टैक्स डॉक्यूमेंटेशन। देन आपकी कंपनी का पैन कार्ड बनेगा। कंपनी पैन कार्ड बनने के बाद आपका अकाउंट खुलेगा। अकाउंट खुलने के बाद आपकी बाकी रजिस्ट्रेशन होंगी।
Okay, so beyond company registration, are there other critical licenses or permits that new businesses in India often need to obtain depending on their industry or type of operation?
Depends. If you want a Ford license to be registered, for Ford company to be registered, आपको Ford license लेना पड़ेगा FSSAI का. If you are running a hotel, you would need to bring in all the licenses of hotels जो भी required है. फिर अगर आप एक ऑफिस चला रहे हो तो डेली शॉप्स एंड एस्टैब्लिशमेंट एक्ट के अंडर यू विल हैव टू रजिस्टर योरसेल्फ। जो भी शॉप्स एंड एस्टैब्लिशमेंट एक्ट है उस पर्टिकुलर स्टेट का, उसके हिसाब से आपको अपनी ऑफिस को रजिस्टर कराना पड़ेगा। फिर उसके बाद अगर कोई ड्रग्स एंड कॉस्मेटिक्स में जा रहा है तो ड्रग्स एंड कॉस्मेटिक्स के सारे लाइसेंसेस आपको लेने पड़ेंगे।
Let's discuss the financial side. What are the typical initial capital requirements to start a company in India, and how does this vary by business type?
दैट डिपेंड्स कि आप अपनी इनिशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट कितनी रख रहे हो। अगर आप 10,000 रख रहे हो तो 10,000 प्लस द प्रोफेशनल फीस अलॉन्ग विद द गवर्नमेंट फीस, which approximately comes out to 25 to 30,000 rupees for a company registration typically till the end of the process. Now some people might do it for a lower price also depending upon the professional competency, but an average of 25 to 30,000 is the fees for a company registration in India.
Okay. So, India has a vibrant startup ecosystem. What government schemes, incentives, or support programs are available for new companies, especially startups, in terms of funding, tax benefits, or mentorship?
See, basically, Startup India के अंदर you can register yourself, and there are many startup incubators that are there. Other than that, there are certain startup loans that are there. You've got a tax exemption also that you can get for 3 years if you are a startup in India. But that depends on what kind of startup are you running, what is your financial model, and what is the problem that you're solving. So उसके लिए बहुत सारे options available हैं, but it depends कि तुम कौन सी market को explore करना चाह रहे हो। और बहुत सारे startup incubators हैं. So these incubators help you set up your startup and fund you for the initial period. Then you get venture capitalist also if you're working on a very big idea. So they start funding you. So there are many ways to generate fundings.
So once a company is registered, what are the immediate next steps in terms of setting up operations like opening a bank account, hiring, and setting up an office?
See, basically hiring and all is part of the company. Now some companies do not hire a lot of employees, while some people might hire a lot of people depending upon the type of business they're into. Now for the bank account, you have to have all the registration documents with you and the incorporation certificate with you, which is put up in the bank, and your signatures of both the partners are required, and then the bank account is opened. Now with respect to setting up an office, आज की डेट में you have got the option of having a virtual office. If you don't want to open a proper office, you can go for a virtual office. Now this virtual office basically is a place which exists on paper, but you are not actually sitting there. These are generally used by young startups which are tech based and do not need a sitting place as such. So इसके अंदर you can use those virtual offices also, and you can set up your own offices if you want to.
What are some of the most common challenges or roadblocks new businesses face in India after registration, and how can they proactively prepare for them?
See, basically सबसे बड़ा roadblock तो है business generate करना. When you open a company, so to build that trust of people on you, you have to build a ecosystem. So how to get business is a big roadblock. So you need to have a strong business development model, and you need to have people with you who can generate business for you. Second is compliances. Most of the startups in India are facing a lot of issues with respect to startups. So you should look for all-in-one solution of either from a CA firm or from a law firm, which is able to help you with all the legal compliances. Now, when all the legal compliances are catered for, तुम्हारे ज़्यादातर जो penalties लगती हैं या delays लगते हैं वो बच जाते हैं.
Okay. Finally, what advice would you give to someone with an entrepreneurial dream in India, especially concerning resilience, networking, and continuous learning?
So you need to be very active in your own industry. You need to go meet people, and you need to be very thorough with the subject that you deal in. बिकॉज जब तक तुम किसी सब्जेक्ट में डील कर रहे हो, तुम उसके बारे में थरो नहीं हो, तुम एक प्रॉपर सोल्यूशन नहीं दे सकते. जब तुम एक प्रॉपर सोल्यूशन नहीं दे पाओगे, तब तक तुम मार्केट में स्टैंड नहीं ले पाओगे. एंड ऑलवेज कीप योर अकाउंट्स वेरी क्लियर. I mean, your accounting has to be very clear because funding जब आपको मिलती है, they look at your accounts. They look at how much sales you've made, what is the profit you've made. So inflated accounts also lead to a lot of disaster. And further, whenever you're opening a bank account, look for a bank account which is a zero balance bank account in a current account also, because you do not know what is the amount of business you're going to do in the initial 1 year. And alongside that, always be ready with alternate solutions so that you can come to conclusions in a very good period of time, and have a accounts guy and a lawyer or a law firm with you, so that whenever you're stuck in any legal compliances or issues, there is somebody who can guide you through and sail you through to get a solution.
Sir, I think I will put our convo to a pause here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.